Welcome back to Beyond the Buckets. Happy to have Coach Will Freedman. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Will, you are the head coach at Lassen Community College, and you're entering your sixth season. But why don't you give everybody some context, give a 3-minute backstory on where you grew up and how you got to where you're at now.
I'd be happy to. So I'm from originally Santa Monica, California, down in Southern California, right by the beach. Grew up there. My playing career started at the Santa Monica Boys and Girls Club. Played all the way till high school. Played at Santa Monica High School. Had a great high school coach there, James Heck. Learned a whole lot from there. Went to Cal State East Bay. Played there for 5 years. I redshirted a year because I tore my ACL, which was an experience.
Yeah.
And then from there, I had a brief opportunity to play overseas. I signed with Maccabi Haifa's farm team, the team in Israel. I was there for maybe a cup of coffee or so, and then ended up playing. My last time playing was in Brazil at the Maccabi Pan American Games, representing Team USA. Won a gold medal there. From there, my knees, told me no more basketball, so I had to have one more surgery, and then was able to start my coaching career really at Santa Monica High School, back where it started. Was there for a couple of years. Got to be an assistant varsity coach, and they had my first year there, they won the SoCal CIF championship, SoCal regional championship, and then we lost in the state championship. So I was like, oh, this coaching thing's pretty easy. And then, was able to coach the sophomore team there. It was a really big school. So they had 4 teams, freshman, sophomore, JV, and varsity. So,
wow.
Got to, coach the sophomore team, and then was able to coach JV. By then, one of my older coaches at Cal State East Bay, he was the head coach at Lassen, asked me to come up here to be his assistant. So I made that trip, helped him out for a year, and then things worked out where I ended up being able to move over to the seat to the left of me, and then been here ever since.
Love it. Growing up in Santa Monica, who is the best starting 5 out of all the alumni at Santa Monica High School?
Man,
and you got to put yourself in there. You got to put yourself.
Right?
I know there's been some really good players that come out of there.
Yeah, no, especially recently. That's the interesting part where my freshman year, that's kind of seemed when it started to turn the corner a little bit. And then by the time I came back as an assistant, you had guys who were going on recruiting trips more, for lack of a better way to put it, for the high school. So I don't think you could talk about the program at this point without mentioning both Matthews brothers, Jordan Matthews, who's at Cal for 3 years and was part of that Gonzaga team that lost in the national championship. His younger brother, Jonah Matthews, who's at USC. If I remember correctly, he's the one who hit that game-winning shot against UCLA last year.
Yeah.
It's basically their last game of the year. Those two, there's a guy by the name of Tim McGrath, who he went to San Diego State for a little bit, ended up finishing up his career at Dominguez Hills, and then has been like a YouTube sensation where, he made it on Sports Nation one time for jumping over a guy dunking on him. And then, let's see, I'm trying to think, I got to have someone pass me the ball.
Those guys shoot.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if there's enough basketball. I'll say just a shout out for another really good young man, Travis Jackson. He was part of that team in 2011 that won all those championships. He ended up walking on at Sac State and had a really good career there, and is now playing professional in the Philippines. He's a great basketball player, but all 4 of those guys, really talented on the floor, but great guys off the court as well.
Nice. Glad you put yourself into it. And then this is another question for you, but one fun fact about me is I'm afraid of cats, and I haven't told anybody on this podcast, but I decided to do it right now. But I've always been like terrified of cats. So what would be one fun fact about yourself?
Well, just to kind of, I guess, piggyback off the route you took, Lassen College is named after a volcano. I didn't know California had any. So being all the way up here in the mountains, there's a national park about an hour and a half away. So I figured if I'm coaching here, I might as well, hike the volcano. And so during that process of hiking it, I realized I was afraid of heights.
Ooh.
So, which is a unique experience. We hiked it up with my girlfriend, it's my girlfriend and myself, and she's sitting off the edge eating beef jerky, kind of just enjoying the view, and I'm staying in the middle, trying not to hyperventilate, trying to
Yeah,
meditate, trying to do something, only focusing on how I'm going to get down.
for sure.
But yeah, I'd say not too many people know about that.
Yeah, heights is definitely like really, really high things are completely scary. Like I know my wife and I, we were in Toronto, and I forget what they call the little needle that goes all the way up, but it's like
Yeah, Space
two,
Needle.
yeah, it's like 250 stories up, and you take this
Hmm.
elevator up, and like you don't even want to look down. You're like, oh my,
Hmm.
like you just start feeling something, and this
Hmm.
anxiety comes on you, and you're right,
Hmm.
like you kind of just try to back up and try to compose yourself, but it's a different experience
Right.
if you don't like heights.
Yeah, and I'm a control freak too, so I feel like I don't know something about that. There's too many things that could go wrong in between being at the top and the bottom. I'm fine on the ground. I try not to think of it too much when I'm on an airplane, but it's I guess that's one of the reasons why I coach too.
For
Try to be
sure.
in control as much as I can.
Definitely, I'm the same way. So tell me, your first experience was a state championship, being an assistant on that staff, and and you've had some success at Lassen as well. But tell me some of the ups and downs that you've had in coaching. You've had the highest of the
Hmm.
highs, and then you've had some just turbulent times as well,
Yeah.
and just we all do. And so tell
Hmm.
me about some of the ups and downs of coaching.
Well, what's unique just about athletics in general, right, is you can't hide from it. Like if you have a bad game, I remember in high school, you have a bad game, you still got to go to class the next day, and people are going to ask you what the hell happened, and you can't run from it. Like I guess technically you can, but it says more about you than anything. As a coach, your team stinks it up, but you got to watch the film the next day. You have to be able to take the temperature of the team in terms of morale, be able to do what you need to do to keep them on track. Because especially at the junior college level, early on, just in general, I guess, really being able to keep them bought in. Because it's easy to stay bought in when things are going well, but even during great seasons, you hit a little bit of a snag on something, you have to be able to turn it around because you're dealing with people. And again, especially at the junior college level, you're dealing with a lot of unique individuals from all around, and especially with us, we get guys from all around the world.
Wow.
We try to get as many California guys, but convincing guys from big cities to come up to the mountains where it snows and everything isn't always the easiest of sales. So we rely on a lot of out-of-state guys, international guys. We've had guys from Belgium, Ukraine, Canada, the UK, all over really, and being able to connect with them, keep them on track, keep them on pace, and understand no matter obviously we all want to win, and what happens on the score is important, but it's how we do things, right? It's not necessarily what we do; it's how we do it, the standard that
Yeah.
we hold ourselves to. Because the years where we've had down years, we've bounced right back the next year because those guys have learned that, and that's one of the other unique things about junior college is you don't have these guys for all that long, so you're constantly having to rebuild your culture, usually your culture. Those guys help set it, and then when they leave, they took those qualities with them.
Right.
And what's difficult for a lot of returners who come in and have success, they just assume, oh, I just have to continue doing what I did. Where like, no, you need to now take the reins from the guys who left, and now teach the new guys. And it's not an exact science, but again, you're trying to work with humans, right? Where we have good days, bad days. Some are more volatile than others, and trying to make those relationships and those connections where you can tell whether something's going on with somebody, whether or not they're willing to say it or not, just by being able to read their behaviors, because we're around these guys a lot. If I have a guy who acts a certain way and it's extremely out of character, I have my first instinct is, hey, something must have happened, whether in class or maybe back home, and be patient and take some time to try and figure out what's going on, because they're not gonna openly tell me things more often than not, or especially in the beginning of practice. But you have to build those relationships, build that trust, where they understand and truly believe that you have the best interest in mind. Because a lot of these guys have been told that before. Every
Right.
coach, I believe every coach starts the relationship with, hey, your best interest in mind, this, that, and the other. And then as the season goes on, they may misinterpret coaching, or some guys may not be as well as communicating to them. There's a whole bunch of factors. But being able to, still wake up the next day with a positive attitude, knowing that, when we lose, it hurts me just as much as it hurts them. If anything, I'm surrounded by it a little bit more just because I have to watch the film. I don't want to
Right.
go to the grocery store after a loss, either. But it's something where, again, you kind of have to, learn from it, stare it in the eye, and try to fix it as fast as possible. Because, especially times like right now when things are bad, there's not a lot of sympathy out there for a lot of people, where it's just, hey, you just have to, find a way. And, using basketball, using athletics in general to try and teach those lessons, and where, we have control of our own destiny if we, control our habits, we do things the right way. So, obviously winning helps reinforce those things, but you really getting your money's worth teaching, when the scoreboard doesn't necessarily relate or express all the things that you've been working on. Because you know how it is. You can have a great week of practice, and for many reasons, you may not, come out on top in the game. That doesn't take away all the work and the things that have been learned in the process. And trying to get these guys to understand that, because I tell them their best basketball is not going to happen at Lassen College. It's when they leave. We're help getting them ready. We're guiding them, and hopefully they're able to take as many things as possible and carry that with them when they move on from
A lot of things that I really like, but they all come down to one thing, and it starts with an R, is a relationship. And
here.
all of the things that you just mentioned were relational driven. Pouring into the kids if they're having a bad day or if they're having a good day, even it's all relationship based, and that's what our goal is as educators, teachers, and coaches, is to build that rapport with them and help them along their journey. While the journey may go a bunch of different paths and it's going to be difficult, some days are going to be filled with rain, or some days there's going to be a hill that you have to get through, but you're going to have to be able to get through it. And the qualities that you learn, the culture that you're presenting in the program, will hopefully allow them to you know be able to mitigate that later on, whether that be in an actual game or contest. But more than likely it's going to be when they can't afford their rent, or something
Exactly.
happens with a family member or friend. And that's where you really come into play with these things that you're learning on and off of the court. And it's so important for us as coaches to make sure that we are driving that narrative every single day. And the one thing that you talked about is, maybe they are having a bad day, but it's our job to be there for them. But it's not our job to coddle them and say, hey, like, it's hard work. Winning
Hmm.
basketball is hard work, and winning in life is hard work, and we're always going to have setbacks. I don't know if you watched it, but I was watching the USF Cal game last night on the Pac-12 network.
Hmm.
Actually, it was during the day, and USF was dominating the entire game from start to finish. And if they were up one. They get fouled with like 10 seconds left to play. Their best free throw shooter goes to the free throw line. He misses a shot. They come down, and Cal's got the ball. They get it to their best guy. He's trapped, can't go anywhere,
Hmm.
skips it. They throw it to the guy that did not have a point in the game. And he catches and shoots from about 28 feet, and it goes in, and they lose by two.
Hmm.
uh, I just felt bad for those kids because they didn't deserve to lose, but sometimes you get unlucky, and
Yeah, exactly.
that's very much the case in our life. COVID is one of those things that is just unlucky for all of us, and all of us have been affected in some sort of way. But you really touched on the relationship piece, and I just really, really appreciate you talking about that, because you barely talked about winning and losing. Like you said, that is important, but it's not the most important thing.
Yeah. Well, and even to piggyback off that, I'm big with quotes, and one of them that I try to be the foundation of, because we're recruit guys, and it's based off your relationship with them. If I'm going to get a guy from Texas to trust to fly all the way, to California, live up in the mountains, where he's not moving to the Bay Area, he's not moving to Southern California, he's not seeing any beaches here. He may see some lakes, but and a whole lot of deer. But for guys to be willing to do that, it's based off relationships, and nobody cares how much you know until they know how much, or yeah, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care,
Sure.
right? And I want that to where they know, we all say that we have the best interest in mind, but our actions speak louder than words. And And in terms of leadership, so much of it is taught just by watching. So and these guys can tell if you're faking it. If you truly know what you're teaching them, they're going to know that. Just like if you're kind of making up as you go along, these guys are able to recognize if you're being for real or not. And especially in an emotional environment like a game, your true values, your priorities are going to come out, right? If you're all about winning, you may overlook certain things that guys have done, whether showing up late to the bus, you getting a report from a teacher, and whether or not to acknowledge that before the game or after the game, so you can still play the guy. There's a lot of things that you have to have a sound philosophy where basically it's your compass, so you're able to make these decisions without hesitation. If you want your guys to be respectful to the officials, you got to be respectful to the officials. It goes both ways, because they see us, and especially
Right.
they see us in those times. So after a win, after a loss, how we respond to that, they're going to kind of you know take that baton and run with it as well.
And how have you been building these relationship with players? If you have a kid that is out of state and you're not able to directly see them, how have you been able to build that rapport with them where they're able to, like you said, trust you, somebody that's all the way across the
Hmm.
country, and to come to a place that may be unknown?
Yeah, well, one way to spell love is time, right? You give them your time, right? And so much of that is just the normal recruiting process, just staying in contact with them, showing your personality, giving them an idea about who you actually are. Because again, my dad was always good at humbling me. So it's like when I went through my recruiting process, he was always quick to remind me, well, these guys want you to go there, so they're going to tell you nice so I keep that in mind, where I want them to not just think that, look, I want you to come here, but it's not just because you're talented, but it's because what you bring to the table as an individual. We're trying to develop you to be the best basketball player you can be, but also so you can be the best person, the best leader, because hopefully they'll lead the team. If not, they'll lead in their own business or some other industry. At the very least, they'll be a leader in their own family when they have kids and everything, where we want them to still be a positive reflection of our whole program. Because that's what our echo ends up being, is how the types of guys that they end up being, and knowing that we can try and do all the X's and O's we want, but ultimately it's behaviors, it's teaching them habits, it's holding them to a standard, and just being there for them. And in a year like this, where I haven't physically met probably 90% of my guys, all we've been doing is stuff through Zoom and workout videos and stuff like that. But it's been consistent. I'm meeting with them, an individual meeting with all of them once a week, and then we have a team meeting at the end of the week. And making sure that it's not just lip service. Caring about, asking about them, trying to find their interests. Where not only does it help me get to know them, but also helps in terms of communication, where I'm able to use references of shows that they've heard of. When I was recruiting early on, I'd say, oh, this place reminds me of the movie Hoosiers, and I quickly learned that none of them had ever seen or heard of the movie Hoosiers, so it wasn't a very good reference to use. So trying to find different ways to to connect and everything, because that's again, it really comes down to relationships. If they're going to sacrifice not just leaving home, but then everything that comes with just being a part of a team and sacrificing blood, sweat, and tears for basketball, you want it to you don't want there to be any doubt that it's not worth it.
For sure. What are some of the things that you do in your program as far as like culture building? And then I
Mm-hmm.
guess this is a two-part question. The second one would be, how have you have you found, like, for me, we do our Zooms weekly as well, so we meet as a team 4 times a week. But that communication sometimes feels one-sided because they might be on mute or whatever. It's
Mm-hmm.
hard to have a real conversation with 12
Mm-hmm.
12 people on a Zoom. Usually it's me, or if you ask a question. But how have you been able to do those two things? One, in a regular year, what would be some of those things that you would
Mm-hmm.
do? And then two, how have you been able to adapt with Zoom meetings?
Yeah, we're in a unique situation in a regular, because we have on-campus housing. The majority of the team lives in the dorms, and I also work in the dorm, so I'm around them a lot. Just I see them every day. They're around each other a lot. We have a small school, so the gym's open a lot too. So they're able to interact with each other, not just in the dorm room, but in the gym as well, where the foundation of what we want to be, other than we want these guys to know how much we care, but it's work. We need guys who truly love basketball up here because there's nothing really else to do up here. We have a small school, so there's not a lot of random PE classes going on in our gym. So it's basically it's all for practice. So if guys are willing to wake up early enough, it's open and they can get shots up, they can work on things, they can get in the weight room. If they want to stay late enough, especially if they want to make friends with the custodians and things like that, where they're able to work together. Because again, it's a lot easier for you to give up your shot to someone who is working just as hard, and he's wide open. Will the biggest thing is I want these guys to know who they are, what they've been through, and because that so much of that makes up who they are. It's hard to dislike somebody once you get to know them, because even we all have our own deficiencies, but there's reasons for that. A lot of it may have to do with trauma or whatnot, but being able to understand that. And in a normal year, we have introductions where we have guys, they have to tell us where they're from, how many siblings they have, tell us a story about what they want to do when basketball's over, and tell us a story that kind of reflects who they are. That if we were to truly know them, they this is the story they would need to know. And it ranges a lot. Some of the stories, some of these guys have been through so much that it's heartbreaking, but it's also inspiring, the fact that they're still trying to better themselves. They're trying to put themselves in a position to not just help themselves and their future families, but the current families as well, where they could have easily given up a long time ago, but they don't. And again, that's someone where how could I make excuses and not want to work hard each and every day if these guys are willing to do that? And so trying to kind of take that with the Zoom meetings, where we have the same thing where they have to have an intro, but also and I 100% agree with you. You have a team Zoom meeting, it's hard to have that interaction. Just realistically, just in a gym with them, talking to the team, some guys can fall through the cracks in terms of are they truly getting it, or are they just nodding their head just so they can kind of move on. But that's why I make sure to have these one-on-one meetings. I have a one-on-one with every single guy, which is great. At times, I'll try to pick a subject or a theme that we'll talk about, and I'm kind of doing the same talk 20 times, so that may kind of get monotonous. But we try to make them also as individuals, so they're participating. So for our team Zoom meetings, each of them are presenting who their intro. I had them choose their goals and work on that, because they all have very broad and generic goals. But then trying to teach them, look, you can kind of reverse engineer. Oh, you want to be an all-conference player? Well, what qualities do you consider an all-conference player to have? And then breaking that even further down. Okay, well, what drills, what things you want to be a really good shooter? How many shots do you have to take each and every day? And then making that commitment. So when later on, they're telling me something like, hey, you said this is what your goals were. There's a really good book by Trevor Moawad. It takes what it takes, and
Mm-hmm.
he's a mental guy for Russell Wilson, who's able to
Yep.
bounce back after throwing that interception, and they work on having a neutral mindset where what's done is done. The future's not here. It's a little more than just being mindful, which is living in the present, but just focusing on your current behavior, because that's the only thing that you can control. And focusing on that. And he listed out a bunch of neutral words, and I had those guys take, I think there's a list of maybe 30 words or so. I'm like, hey, pick 5, and and explain to us why you chose those 5. And most of them, hardworking, determined, all these. And then they miss a workout, and it's like, wait a second, didn't you choose hardworking? Didn't you choose determined? I didn't tell you to choose those. This is the standard that you chose. Are you actually living up to these things? So it's trying to make it as real as possible, because to build a culture, so remote, I tell them, like, we're all our own islands. We've got to make sure that we're building bridges too, where it starts with making sure, our own closet's clean, right? Where you're going to the gym every day or as often as you can, because obviously, where we got guys from California, Washington, Texas, South Carolina, New York. I got a kid in Brazil. So obviously the resources are all different. Some may not be able to play outside. Some may not be able to find indoors. So it's trying to still find a way to develop these habits that they'll need. So they're living out the culture that we want. So when they get here, hopefully they just have to continue what they're doing. Because in my opinion, culture just it's your patterns and it's your values, right? Your patterns are your habits, what you do every day, and your values are your priorities. If something's a high priority, you're going to do it all the time, or you're at least
Right.
going to put a lot of time and effort into that. And so depending on what those things are, it's going to say, a lot about what we're going to be able to do. So hopefully, we're, what they get out of it is, hey, they're working hard every single day. That's what they're trying to do. And then hopefully, and it goes with everything, because, the way you do anything is the way you do everything. So you work hard in the classroom, you stay, on top of your stuff off the court. It will trickle down eventually on the court. Making sure that they're giving me their schedules where, hey, what time, how often are you getting into the gym? And then saying,
And are
hey,
are are they on campus right now or
no,
no? Okay.
no, they are not. We're all remote. We have a couple local guys who I've been able to do some things with. We had a couple guys find housing, so we've been able to do some things. Not so much lately because numbers have increased. But what's really tough about this time is, you're having guys fall through the cracks who really need that structure. It's not that they won't be putting in the effort or they don't have that ability. It's just, they're so used to being in that structure or just being home. They have other responsibilities. They have to help out around the house. They have to work. Basketball is something that they want to do, but being home is, it's just different. So trying to, at the very least, empower these guys as much as possible. Where, look, you have control. Yeah, you still have to take care of your responsibilities, but if you truly want this thing, hey, plan out your schedule. You want to be the best shooter on the team. Your schedule can't say I'm only in the gym 2 days a week. You have to increase it or change what your goals
And
are. Because they
that
have
that's
that power.
that's a very good point because I like what you said earlier about reverse engineering what you actually want. And so, if your goals don't match what you're actually putting in,
Hmm.
it's never going to work. And we had
Exactly.
Alan Stein come and speak to our group
Hmm.
this week actually, and he says, "All right, well." Let's say you got this goal, whatever the goal may be, and let's say you want to have a beach body by the end of the pandemic. All right, well, everything, and you have two choices to make, and everything is geared towards having this beach body. Is this bowl of frosted flakes going to help me achieve that or hinder me from achieving that? And you have a choice to make. Well, if it's going to hinder you, you got to go the other way. And
Hmm.
same thing if it's working on your jump shot. If me taking this time off today is going to help me become an all conference player or not, well, I need to choose the alternative, which is going to make me or give me an opportunity to do that. And
Hmm.
so many people miss the boat. They have these lofty goals, but they have caviar dreams, and
Right.
they haven't put the equity in to actually eat the
Yeah.
caviar.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's really easy to have the fancy goals, right? Especially now with social media, right? You could, go on Instagram and find a great meme with a cool quote or something, and then, and that motivates you for a couple of days. But motivations like showering. You can't just do it once and expect to smell good the rest of the month. You gotta, it's something you have to constantly do. And again, if it's a high value, it's a high priority, you're going to find a way to do it. And that's the unique thing about now, where in a way, this is going to separate the guys who truly love the game of basketball and the guys who just like saying that they're a basketball player, because you're finding a way, whether
Right.
it's guys finally being willing to play outdoors, just just dribbling outside, finding some way to get better, because yeah, it's you're either getting better or you're getting worse. You're not going to stay the same.
Right. Being a high level player, and for people that don't know, you went to Cal State East Bay, and I'll put this all in the show notes, but you were top five in scoring when you
Mm-hmm.
graduated, top 10 and or top three in shooting percentage. I mean, you could
Yeah.
really shoot that thing, top 10 in rebounding. So you had a lot of school records while you were there. What have you used from your playing career background
Mm-hmm.
into now being a collegiate coach?
What's interesting is, like, it helps you and it hurts you, because like everyone's perspective is unique, right? It took me a while to develop patience with some of these guys, because they're not going to see the game the same way I did, just because I was lucky enough to be able to have basketball basically be my life for majority of my time growing up.
Yep.
So it was simple. Like, there really wasn't a choice. It was like, this is what I'm going to do, and I had to. I wasn't the most athletic, especially in college, having to fight through injuries. I couldn't take days off. I didn't want to take days off. It really was my life. So at least being able to understand and explain these guys the habits that it takes, but at the same time being flexible and understand that everybody's different, and most importantly, they learn differently. You haven't taught someone something until they've actually learned it. If I some way that I'm able to teach offense one year works for one team, but the next year doesn't work. What definition of insanity is continue to do the same thing over, expecting a different result. If it's not clicking with these guys, I have to change. It's a difference if they're not paying attention or not putting in the work. But if they are, and it's just not connecting, I got to find a different way to do it. So that's something I've struggled with in terms of, early on, being patient, knowing that not everything that I experienced would help them. But, with that being said, I like if I'm changing up my starting lineup, I want my guys to know that beforehand. If I had a guy who started most games throughout the year, I want him to know I respect him enough to look, I don't want it to be a surprise for you that you're not going to be starting. I don't mind these guys asking me why I made a decision. There's a time and place for it, obviously. But if I can't in a coherent way explain to them why I made a certain decision, then I don't deserve the job. I don't mind explaining to them. We're in the gym every single day. Some other person who hasn't been there, it's harder to explain to them because they weren't in practice the week before. Because there's a lot of moving parts. But through my career, I've been a starter. I've been the leading scorer. I've been a role player. I've been a guy who was on the bench expecting to play more and being unhappy. So kind of still being able to have that empathy because I'm not, I'm far removed, but not super far removed. Where I know about the egos. I know the pride aspect of it, but also being able to tell these guys, look, that's normal. But it's about making these sacrifices too. Where it's not about me, it's about we. So that's the most important thing, especially at the junior college level, where you're getting guys to be bought into a team concept, but at the same time they're here because they're trying to get scholarships, right? So it's really easy for them to kind of flush the team idea out the window when things get bad and just focus on their stats. When trying to also get them to understand, like, look, there's a difference between getting a scholarship somewhere where you're battling to win 4 games a year versus you're getting a scholarship to a program that's trying to that has the potential to win conference championships, tournament championships, national championships, and stuff like that. It's a totally different level. So that's something, and especially the amount of drive you need just as an individual. Like, obviously, the coaching staff will do their job is to help, but it has to come from the player. What I tell my guys is, I have the energy, but I'm gonna, I'm completing your circle, right? The amount of energy that you give me, I'm gonna match it. If you're trying to get in the gym every day, I'll be there too, but I shouldn't have to drag you out of bed, to get into the gym. I shouldn't have to tell you more than one time that you shouldn't be showing up to practice 10 minutes before practice. If this is
Right.
truly your craft and this is something that you're really trying to do.
Right. One thing you talked about, and it goes back to relationships and being in communication. But that happened to me where and I changed the starting lineup, but it was because they either missed practice or they were late. Um, and everybody knows what the rule is, so
Yeah.
you're not starting. And this was a NorCal semifinal game to take us to the NorCal final, and she started the whole season except for this game. Um, and I didn't tell her right away, but I thought everybody knew.
Right.
That was my naiveness, I guess. If even if that's a word, I was naive to the fact that everybody should know,
Yeah.
and I should have communicated it with her because we ultimately she played her worst game of the season. And this is a kid that averaged a double double, and I don't think she had uh, she might have scored a bucket or two, might have had a
Hmm.
couple of rebounds, and it's all because she was checked out of that actual game. And it could have been really solved with, hey, you're not starting because you missed practice or you were late
Hmm.
to practice the day before our state NorCal
Hmm.
game.
Yeah.
But it always just harkens back to me of just realizing that moment. I'm always going to try to over communicate. Not that people
Exactly.
outside of the program, like you said, need to know anything, but I am going to try to over communicate with our
Hmm.
group so they
Hmm.
understand, almost to the point where I pulled in this was like March this past year, because we ended our season in NorCal this year, and then I took our seniors. This is right when the pandemic was starting to happen. This is the last like meal I had with a group
Hmm.
outside of my family for a really long time. And I brought our 3 seniors, and they said, "Well, coach, maybe you communicate too much." I'm like, You can't really
Yep.
win, if
Right.
you don't communicate enough. But I'd rather over communicate rather than and explaining. Here's the reason why so and so is in the game, because
Hmm.
this is what they are doing to maintain their spot. I want everybody to understand what goes through my head. I know it sucks, like you said, to be on the end of the bench. I've been on the end
Hmm.
of the bench. I've also been one of the better players. I've been a starter, but I also haven't played a minute in a game as well.
Hmm.
And so, just that communication is a great point, because if you don't do it, you're leaving a lot of stuff up for people to
Yeah.
think, and
Hmm.
what your thoughts can bring in. Oh, coach doesn't like me, or
Yeah.
da, 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 or whatever the case
Right.
may be. So,
Yeah, yeah. You don't want them guessing. Granted, let's be honest, and I've fallen in this trap constantly, where I'll try to come up with something where, hey, I'm going to do this in such the perfect way that no one's going to misinterpret it whatsoever. Or for our class now, I'm sending them workouts, online, so they're watching a video, and really all they have to do is not, I don't want to say mimic the video, but learn the video and then try to do the drill. So it's an example video,
and
and
let me
just
ask you,
watching
where
how.
where are you getting the videos from?
Some of it I'm having the local guys. I'm recording them do it. A lot of it I'm using workouts that people post on Twitter.
Hmm.
Especially early on in the pandemic, there was a whole lot. It was like a treasure trove of just drills that a lot of skill trainers, DJ Sackman, just a bunch of guys who you can get some, really, challenging things, but and also trying to take those and put them into a context of what we actually do. But also finding stuff that are challenge, getting these guys out of their comfort zone, right? Because if it's too easy, they're not going to take it too seriously. If it's too difficult, they're not going to try it after the first time. So, but also having them understand, the purpose for it. Because, I think learning is a big issue, because, we teach them, it's the normal teaching ladder, right? We explain something, we demonstrate it, we imitate it, we correct it, then they repeat it, and then eventually retention happens. But, from my own experience, I remember just throughout high school and middle school how many times you cram the night before a test, memorize as much as you can, you take the test, and then the moment you leave that classroom, everything is gone because you don't need it anymore. And so these guys are trained throughout their entire educational process, more or less, to memorize, and just so they can pass the test, they find a subject they're interested in, they're going to learn it, they're going to retain it. They have a really good teacher who inspires them, they're going to, they'll find ways to learn it and retain it. And so there's times where you'll do a drill and they're just memorizing the drill, and then you will then do a scrimmage or do some sort of, do something to kind of put into context, and nobody carried any of it over, and it'll drive you crazy. But it's something where these guys, their mindset is just to memorize it. They're not really putting into context or realizing how this can actually help them right away. So there's a lot of different ways where I've learned that, the small sided games and things like
Oh,
that.
beautiful. We're
Yeah,
speaking the same
yeah,
language
right,
now. I
right. Oh,
actually,
it's
actually on Wednesday I've got Uric McNicholas.
uh-huh.
He's one of those guys that created a
Hmm.
bunch of the small sided games with. He was on Chris Oliver's
Yep.
basketball
Yeah.
podcast.
Basketball
But
immersion.
yep.
Hmm.
So he's coming on. He just reached out to me last week, and yeah, I'm excited to have him on because I've literally stolen a lot of his drills, like even
Oh yeah.
the like the floaters,
Uh
so
huh.
they'll do knockout with floaters. And so before
Hmm.
everything got shut down, we're doing 1 foot runners and 2 foot floaters, in a
Right.
knockout setting where the kids are having a good time. But I watch all of our shots from every single game and saying, okay, well, what is actually happening in the game? And
Hmm.
any of the stuff that doesn't actually happen in the game, let's not do it in practice.
Hmm.
And that's worked out a lot for us, and we play a lot more, where it's a
Hmm.
bunch of different one-on-ones. Okay, well, now it's one-on-one in the post where we got a 6'3" post and we've got a five
Hmm.
two guard. Well, you got to figure it out, and figure out, number one, if you're on offense, how
Hmm.
you're going to try to score around this 6'3" kid and you're 5'2", and vice versa. How are you going to guard this six foot
Right.
three kid in the post? And you can't, you're not going to be able to have the advantage. But then vice versa. All right, now we get in on the perimeter. Now we got a closeout opportunity. Now what are you going to do?
Right.
Either catch and shoot or split and go immediately, and make your decision.
Right. And they find themselves in game situations where they have to think and figure it out on their own, because there's so many times where, as coach, paralysis by analysis, right? We know the answers to everything. We're able to see the big picture because we've been doing this longer than they have, and then we kind of expect them to be able to pick it up just as quick. Where we're better off creating the scenario where they're going to have to figure it out themselves, like throwing them into the water and and seeing whether they're going to figure it out, to doggy paddle and eventually learn how to swim.
No
But it's
doubt.
having that trust. What's interesting, I read this book by Ron Ecker, who's an old school coach who did a lot of statistical analysis where he found watching a lot of college games and NBA games where they're scoring about 30% of their points just off of their play calls. So
Right.
70% of their offense is going through either breakdowns or plays, or at least advantages that are created off those plays. So basically, they're just playing. So,
And
I
even at
remember
our
growing up,
level, even at our level, and I don't mean to cut you off, but that's probably like 20% of the time,
right,
the play
right,
actually gets the shot that you
mm-hmm,
want. And I wanted to make one more quick point. How many times you say, "Well, we taught you that in a game
exactly,
and in practice. We taught you that we just went." And you're telling the
right,
people behind the bench, it's like, but you like
mm-hmm,
you said earlier, and this is I'm still in what you said earlier because I thought that was very, very paramount. You talked about our learning process and cramming, and we try to cram all these things, but we're just
yeah,
we're learning to beat the system
mm-hmm,
in a respect, rather
yeah,
than retaining the information for long-term growth. And that's
mm-hmm.
that's that's so true. I really love that analogy.
No, yeah, and it's and I agree with you. It's probably even a smaller percentage at our levels in terms of actually what we're getting off of the play call, whether it's a quick hitter for a jump shot or something, where it's like we're better off just giving these guys the freedom to put them in situations where they're going to have to make these decisions. You're doing a pick and roll. If you have no timeouts at at the end of the game, you guys have to be able to make those reads. Whether is it going to be a double team? Are they switching it? Do you know those different options where you're putting your players in a situation where they're learning to play versus just learning to play. Because I remember early on, when I played, and even probably the practices that I had were maybe 40% of practices you're going over plays, so you're running 5-on-0 and stuff, where it's just like you're probably better off just letting him play, and that's the route I've taken recently, where we're more 5 out. At the JUCO level, it's predominantly guard oriented. There's not too many big post guys. You do have a post guy, maybe 6'7", 6'8", but now it's just hey, let's we'll play 5 out. We don't have a legit center anyway. Let's just run. We'll negate their size by running. Pressing, running, playing 5 out, pace and space, but giving these guys an opportunity to showcase their ability. Because again, at the end of the day, we want to teach them, but we have to guide them, right? Like earlier when we are talking about dealing with losses and everything, there's certain things that we can't, they have to learn on their own, right? They may have to struggle through a terrible loss, a heartbreaking loss, for them to, fully have some of those messages sink in. And now they're hardened by conference time where they're able to, persevere and deal with all the different adversity that's going to come. Because there's certain things that, that I would not have learned if I hadn't have experienced them myself. And, no matter how much my parents would have liked for me not to have gone through some pains, you have to, the growing pain, there's no growth without some discomfort. Like you have to go through it, and understanding where, it's like the law of mastery. You learn something right away, you're probably good at it, but then eventually the more time you start to, kind of get down, because, you're starting to actually learn that there's a whole lot about the skill set that you didn't know. And then you start to lose confidence. And then that's when usually people stop, someone's trying to change their shooting form, and now they're not making a shot. And now they're so insecure about the misses that they just revert back to their old form and they never get better. Where it's like, no, you're going on the right track. It's supposed to be bad. That's where basically life's filtering out all the normal people, all the people who are not willing to, to go through that. I give my guys a lot of credit for, because I'll have them set their phones up and record part of their workout. So these guys are, at the park, and you got guys in the background playing 5-on-5, and they're doing drills. That you probably got to feel a little insecure doing that. Or, I got one guy who can't get to the gym at all. He can only go to an outdoor court after 10 o'clock. So he has his headlights on in the background as he's doing dribbling drills. Where it's like these guys, again, they're finding a way. Where my hope is, we don't know why we're going through all this, but there's a reason for it. If we keep that the right mindset, where we can't let the doubt kick in, we got to keep our faith that we're gonna work hard and turn all these things into a positive. Where we're going to learn something more out of this, or get something more out of this than we originally thought we could have. Because whether you think you're going to be, successful or not, it leads to your habit. So you're probably going to be right whether you think you're going to or not. Right. So, empowering these guys, having them gain confidence in themselves where, in a game, I don't need you looking at the bench for answers. You guys have it. I haven't scored a meaningful shot in probably 10 years. Like, don't look at me. You guys have the answers. If we need a timeout, we'll call one. But other than that, hey, just be yourselves. Just, who we are. If we're doing what we're supposed to be doing as a group, who we are will be enough. It's just a matter of, having the ball go in or getting the stop at the end.
What struggles have you had doing the small sided games approach? For me, number one, giving up, like you said, you're a control freak, giving up giving up the game basically to the players and allowing them to play um, is one of those things. But and then the second part of the question would be one of the one of the one of the coaches that we had on here early on in the podcast talks about, all right, how does he look at a season, and he looks at, and this is a baseball coach actually, but what can lose you a game.
Mm-hmm.
So I started sending out a group text, or I just sent a text to a bunch of my coaching colleagues, say, what four things would lose you the game. So obviously, the other side of it would be, if you do those
Mm-hmm.
other things, you're going to
Yeah.
win. So I had four things in my head that I was like, okay, if these four things happen, we can't win. And so if we do these four things, we can win. So what would be those four things? And then what has been some of the um, hard things or hurdles that you've had to climb as far as, the small sided games approach or the games approach to basketball?
So the four things
What would
that we
lose? What
can't do,
four things that
four
would
things that
lose you?
lose us.
That would lose you a
Mhm.
game. Yep, and I'll give you mine after, and
Yeah.
we got to sit and choreograph this.
Yeah. Off the top of my head, turnovers. Obviously, I think shot selection is a huge one. Execution. Because especially at our level in terms of scouting a court and knowing guys' tendencies.
Mhm.
And then maybe a little bit of cop out by saying, because obviously rebounding is important, but that kind of goes along with shot selection as well,
Right.
where I think 80% of teams that have the higher shooting percentage win games,
True.
right? And so much of that, like what the simplest definition of what a good shot is a shot that you can make, right?
True.
Or a shot that or at least a good shot is a shot that everybody in the gym or everybody on your team knows it's going to go up, so they're able to get in rebound position. So again, offensive rebounds are going to increase.
So so
And yeah.
I'll give you mine, and then you could text me your list after you have time to
Hmm.
think about it. I know I just put you on the spot. So my four would be, you can't win if you turn the basketball over. That would be number one for me. If you don't have the ball, you're obviously not going to be able
Hmm.
to win the game. Number two would be the offensive rebounds. I think
Hmm.
if you look at trying to get easy shots, kindergarten shots, and getting
Hmm.
easier buckets, well, the two ways to do it were turn the other team over or go and get your missed shots, because even the best teams are going to miss half of their shots. So if we can get maybe a half of that, so 25% of the shots that go up, we're going to get an offensive rebound. Well, we're going to put ourselves in a position to get an easy opportunity at the rim. The third one would be made three. So if we do get that offensive rebound and we don't have a layup, well, we know that a driveway three, or what I call a driveway three, one where you
Hmm.
shoot at the top and nobody's on you, that would be something that we can get more of outside of just the made threes. So made threes would be the third one, and the fourth one would be made free throws. If you
Hmm. Yeah.
if you put all those things together, and I started to do I'm not a I like the analytics, but I'm not a math person. But I just look, if we got all four of those categories, we never lost. We never
Hmm.
lost a game last year when we hit all four of those categories. So those would be things that you can quantify. Execution obviously is definitely one, but I don't know how to quantify execution like
Hmm.
the way you look at it. Hey, we got a good shot off of this set, and me, well, we didn't make the shot. I can, there's an argument where it's like, well, did we execute? Yeah, we probably did. We just missed a shot. So those would be my four.
I think those are the big four for analytics too. offensive efficiency, offensive rebounding percentage, turnover percentage, and then your free throw ratio. So
Right.
now, because I don't have an assistant coach out here, so I have to
Oh, really?
rely a lot on analytics. Yeah, I'm doing like I get help with our athletic director and stuff, but more or less in terms of the day to day stuff, laundry, all that stuff. It's all me. So being able to look at the numbers side, not just for opponents and scouting, of course, because we'll do shot breakdown like, hey, this guy 50% of his the points he scores comes from the 3-point line, right? A quarter of his points come from the free throw line. So we're able to kind of get a good idea of tendencies and things like that. But also in terms of we're big with possessions, where we want to have our points per possession both offensively and defensively. And we want to play at a fast pace where we're creating 80 possessions.
So
If we're able to be
you want
efficient
one point
there,
per possession?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. We want to be scoring in the 80s. So if we're efficient at the very least, yeah, that's 1 point per possession. And then obviously we want it to be lower on the defensive side, but playing at that pace, and this kind of goes in with your small-sided games question in terms of the difficulties adjusting to it, is the game's going to get ugly, right? In practice, teaching that pace, turnovers are going to happen, but it's kind of like the 7 seconds or less philosophy a little bit, where if you're getting a quick shot, at times it may not be the exact shot that you wanted, but that pace is so contagious where now you're playing a team that is usually a walk the ball off the court, run half court sets, but now they're shooting quick threes, right? So now you can see right away that they're getting they're getting caught up in our tempo, and that goes into practice with the small sided games where we see these coaching videos where everything is so I don't want to say choreographed, but it almost looks choreographed where everybody knows what they're doing. It looks super organized, it looks pretty, but there's times for learning it's going to be ugly, right? Guys are running up and down and turnover. You're doing the small side games. They're going so fast that they're turning the ball over. It may not look pretty right away, or what I'll find is guys will just copy each other early on, where you're trying to give them enough freedom to improvise and look at the other side of the floor, where the guy before tried to do Euro stuff, so the next guy's trying to do the same thing, and they're all going on the right side. Where be different, try something else, and eventually they build that confidence and they build that trust, because a lot of them are just trying not to make mistakes, where it's like, no, I don't want you to have that type of mindset, or even kind of like trying to coach and have fear as one of those motivators, where it's like, hey, if you don't do this a certain way, we're going to run. Where obviously, I had coaches like that growing up that they'll get you going and everything, but in my opinion, one of my biggest influencers is trying to make trying not to let my family down, right? I want my guys to not want to be late to practice, not because they don't want coach to get pissed at them, but because they don't want to let their guys down, right? They don't want to they don't want to miss games because they don't want to let their guys down. I think there's a lot more potential for growth with that type of mindset, where again you're building a culture where these guys want to be in the gym together, where you want to see a good teammate look at the bench when someone does something well, and the guys who are jumping up and down, cheering on the teammates as if they scored themselves, that's someone that you can really go to war with, but it's having as a coach in general, because being a coach could be a very vulnerable position when you're on that sideline if things aren't going well, and you're in your mind, you're like, I swear we went over this stuff. It's just, I don't know what's going on. But
Right.
it's having enough self confidence in yourself and trust in your players, where hey, it may look ugly at times, but you keep it together. That it's a process where you're going to be, they're going to get it. They just need reps. Some guys need more reps than others. It's great when you're able to get recruits from great high schools, so you don't necessarily have to focus as long on certain things. You can kind of move on and add stuff and layer and layer and layer. But you can't cut corners, and you have to be willing for it to be ugly early on, because it's an investment, and hey, it's ugly early, but it's going to grow, and it's going to be really, really tough to prepare for, and it's going to eventually look beautiful on the floor.
Right. No, we've been speaking the same language this entire conversation, man. I'm really enjoying our conversation. As we wrap it up, I got two more things. One, you've
Mm-hmm.
kind of been talking about it a lot, but what would legacy mean to you if you look back 50 years from now and you're a retired coach? What does that word legacy mean to you?
It's I kind of mentioned earlier, it's your echo, right? That's something where when Kobe Bryant died, obviously that affected everybody. But I found, being from LA, watching the guy grow up, and just wanting to just have a connection with him, where I tried to read everything that he talked. One of his favorite books was The Alchemist, and in The Alchemist it talks about, it's a shepherd boy, and it's his journey to find his personal legend, and his personal legend was his purpose. It was his why, and that's one of the assignments I gave my players for this semester as well, where it's like, hey, do you know what your purpose is? And you may not know. They're 18, 19, 20. I didn't know what the hell I was going to do when I was that age. So, but it's something, think about, because if you know what your why is, you can get through any how. And, my hope of my personal legend, in my opinion, is being able to pass on everything that I learned from the great coaches and great individuals, that I happened to win the lottery and be around, whether it was, my parents who were great. I had three brothers that, two older, one younger, that are constantly, being successful and doing things that are pushing me. And I know, around the dinner table, they're quick to roast anybody if you misspeak or whatever. So you're always on your toes. But it's the relationships, and out of the things that I've been able to accomplish, probably at this point, one of the most, touching things that happened to me was I had a player invite me to his wedding, and just knowing that, that our relationship meant enough for him to be willing to do that. My girlfriend certainly wasn't happy that I'm having players getting married before we are, but
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. The wins and losses are great, or wins are great, losses suck, but I think this is a John Calipari quote, where our win loss record is not going to be on our tombstone, right? Like that'll be, that'll eventually be forgotten, but ultimately, we want to get to the mountaintop, but it's the people that we interact with along the way, right? It's the impact that we have on others, and that's what I hope my legacy is, where hopefully, I gave these guys some qualities that help them be successful. They're not going to remember everything that we say to them, but they're going to remember how we made them feel. And being able to pick those moments when you can tell that they need a shoulder, to lean on, or they just need a kick in the ass or something. It's like, but no matter what, knowing that I'm still there for them. And I think there's a Brad Stevens quote where the success of a program 5 years down the line if those players are still coming back.
Right.
And I certainly would have liked to have gotten a few more wins and whatnot, but what keeps me going is knowing that those guys are still coming around. They're still asking how the program's doing, and we're still connected.
You absolutely killed it today. I really appreciate your time. But before I let you go, one more thing. If there is a guest that should come on this show, who would it be? And before you say the name, you have to make the connection between that individual and I, so they can come on. So who would somebody be an upcoming guest?
I would say, I'll bring up the guy who I wouldn't be here without him, would be the current San Jose City College coach, Devin I. He, his family just in general, it's hard. I don't think you can necessarily tell the story of California Community College basketball without mentioning that family. Their dad, Denny I, won a state championship at Columbia College back in the day. He'll be in the Hall of Fame for, I believe over 700 wins. I hope I'm not selling him short. But a whole lot of wins. There's Tyson I, who's the head coach at Allen Hancock Community College right now, who, he's turned that program into a powerhouse where not only, are winning games, but, they're getting guys scholarships. Devin, he's at San Jose and was up here at Lassen. Like I said, he was at East Bay. He's the reason why I ended up coming up to Lassen, so that connection. And then their other brother, he's not coaching, but he's put together NorCal Hoops, which streams a lot of junior college and high school games.
Wow.
So,
I,
I certainly wouldn't be here if it weren't for him. And he's got a whole lot of knowledge as well and some funny stories.
Well, you definitely got to make that connection. I literally live 2 miles from San Jose City College. And I know the previous coach there, Percy Carr,
Yeah, Coach Carr.
as well as Dallas Jensen, who used to be on his staff before he went to Gavilan, and now he's down at another JC. Well, you might see him, and you might see him in the playoffs.
I know Coach Jensen. I know exactly what his foot feels like. I played his teams a couple times. So his first win at Gavilan may have been against may have been against us way back
Oh,
then.
really?
So
He
maybe
he
it'll be a trivia question one day.
he's actually the first guest of the Beyond the Buckets
Hmm.
podcast.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a nicer coach than him.
No, he's an awesome man. His dad
Hmm.
is tremendous as well. His brother is now the coach at Gavilan.
Yeah, Gavin.
So yeah, man, it's a small world, this basketball community. I'm so glad
Yep.
to make the connection with you, and I really appreciate you coming on. Where can everybody follow you or follow your team?
Hmm.
This is the plug moment of the show.
Yeah, well, I'm on Twitter at Will_Freedman. Obviously our school website has my contact information. We do some streaming on Facebook and stuff. I know that we're trying to expand that more. I know not too many people on Facebook anymore, but it's we're out there. We're trying to get we just want our guys to get as much exposure as possible, because that's what it comes down to. In our time here, we've had over 29 guys sign scholarships at every single level over the last 5 years. And, it's something that we're proud of. And again, being able to watch these guys continue to grow, not just as basketball players, but as young men. And, it's really what it's all about.
Definitely. Well, thank you for joining.
Thank you for listening to the Beyond the Buckets podcast. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and share the show with your friends. And until next time, take care.